Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our B4063 Gloucester to Cheltenham Cycleway Meet the Contractor event. My name is Alex Howarth. I'm the project manager at Gloucestershire County Council, and I'll be the chair of the event today. And I'm very pleased that we're joined by our contractors, Knights Brown, who have been appointed to build the first section of the path, which will run from M5 Overbridge at Staverton to Pheasant Lane, which will be the focus of our Meet the Contractor event today. Start with some introductions and then an overview of the history and the vision for the scheme, and then we'll pass over to Knights Brown, who will take us through the detail of the first section to be built. We'll then finish off the event with some questions that have been submitted from members of the public. And just as a final note, due to the nature of the live stream today, we're unable to take any questions during the event, but we will check back and provide answers in due course. So the first so I'll start with Kath. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Kath. I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager for Knights Brown, and I'll be undertaking the public liaison role for the B4063 scheme.
Thanks, Kath. And next, Richard.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Richard Knight. I'm the Contracts Manager for Knights Brown, and I'll be overseeing the scheme.
Matt.
Good morning, I'm Matt Baldwin. I'm the Assistant Project Manager for Gloucester County Council on this scheme.
Brilliant, thank you, Matt. So I'll just begin by providing a brief overview to the scope and history. So the scheme originated from a national highways scheme with the aim to reduce cyclists killed, seriously injured on the A40 corridor. A study back in 2015 identified the B4063 as the most continuous, direct, safe and attractive route for cyclists of all ages and abilities. National Highways had completed a preliminary design, which was then passed to Gloucestershire County Council to progress the scheme. The overall vision for the scheme is to provide a high-quality cycle path to connect Gloucester and Cheltenham. The route will stretch for 6 miles between Alcourt Roundabout and Gloucester City Centre via Staverton, Churchdown and Long Leven. Ultimately, the route will then continue to the west through Gloucester Centre into Cheltenham, and there's more details of the Cheltenham section and the current works going on to the west of Cheltenham on the next slide. The scheme design the latest government guidance on cycle design standards and provide more segregation road, making it a much more enjoyable experience than is currently the case. The route will be suitable for all ages and abilities and really help to promote and encourage active travel and ultimately reduce carbon emissions. Today's Meet the Contractor event will focus on the section between M5 Overbridge and Pheasant Lane, which is part of the red section 4 you can see on the map. This is where Knights Brown are appointed to deliver the first half of Gloucestershire County Council. So this slide just provides a bit of a background as to how the B4063 Cycleway ties into the works that are currently on site to the west of Cheltenham. Phase 1 of the West of Cheltenham scheme, which is shown in blue there around Alcourt Roundabout, shows the cycleways constructed here will tie in directly with the B4063. This will ensure continuity as the cycleway passes Alcourt Roundabout and across the new controlled crossing of Fiddler's Green Lane. The route then continues along the A40 to the west through the Cheltenham Walking and Cycling Improvement Scheme, shown in red on the map, and ultimately ending at the railway overbridge by the TGI junction. This scheme will also provide control crossing points at major roads such as Princess Elizabeth Way and cycle priority at side roads. The West of Cheltenham scheme will then tie in with the new proposed cycle ramp from Cheltenham Spa railway station to provide fast and direct access to not only the railway station, but also the Honeybourne Line cycle track for journeys continuing into central Cheltenham. So just to conclude my brief introduction to the scheme, we're delighted work has started on the B4063 and want to really work with residents and businesses to ensure disruption is kept to a minimum while we build this first phase of this fantastic new cycle route. I'd like to now hand over to Matt, who will just give you an overview of the vision and programme of the route in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Alex. Our vision for this scheme is to help cyclists of all ages and abilities to travel safely, ensuring that the facility is accessible to all and aiming to improve health and well-being in the community whilst making a step towards reducing Gloucestershire's carbon emissions. The scheme is also the provision of a high-quality commuter route. This will connect Churchdown, Innsworth and Staverton to public transport hubs in both Gloucester and Cheltenham. The route links multiple workplaces, which include industrial estates, Gloucestershire Royal Hospital and the University of Gloucestershire campuses. On the slide you will see a couple of visual impressions of how the scheme may look when it's completed. Our programme of works for this section is as follows. The M5 overbridge to Pheasant Lane, which started in October 2001, run until spring 2022. And then we'll commence the section between Pheasant Lane to Walcourt Roundabout, which will commence in spring 2022 and run until autumn 2022. Further information about the construction for sections through Churchdown and Elmbridge Court will be announced in the new year. Further information will be publicised and available on our. Now hand over to our contractor for the works, Knights Brown.
Hi, good morning. To those of you who may not be aware of Knights Brown, I thought I'd just start off by sharing a bit of information about our company. Knights Brown is a privately owned, independent, multidisciplinary construction company. We deliver cost-effective, quality projects safely across a number of sectors. These include coasts and rivers, defence, energy, public realm and infrastructure. We currently employ over 300 direct employees and have offices in Ringwood, Hampshire, Rochester and Bridgend in South Wales. As a company, we pride ourselves in our open and straightforward approach to construction and believe in building strong relationships with our clients and the communities where we work. We believe that it's our people who make us great at what we do, and we ensure that our project teams have the right skills and attributes to deliver. We've chosen a highly skilled and professional team for the delivery of the B4063 scheme. I thought it'd be nice to just introduce you to a few of the key members that you will see throughout the project. Usually we'd love to meet you all in person, but due to COVID, this hasn't been possible. But hopefully as the project develops, we may be able to meet some of you face to face instead of in this virtual world that we're currently living in. Richard Knight, who is also on this presentation today and will shortly be talking you through the construction elements of the scheme, will hold overall responsibility for its successful delivery. He'll be supported by 2 experienced engineers, Ross and Peter, and a general foreman, Dennis. They'll be responsible for the day-to-day delivery. My role will be to ensure that we maintain effective communication and community liaison throughout the project delivery. I'll be available at all stages to discuss any questions or queries you may have and to make sure that we keep you in the loop with communications and project updates. I've included my contact details at the end of this presentation if you'd like to get in contact. We're really excited to be delivering the first phase of the B4063 Gloucester to Cheltenham Cycle Improvement Scheme. Knights Brown are constructing the first phase of the larger B4063 Gloucester to Cheltenham cycle path. This will create a high-quality, safe route between the centre of Gloucester and the centre of Cheltenham. The scheme will also link with the current projects at Alcourt and to the east. The improvements made to this section of the scheme will include a fully segregated cycleway to Pheasant Lane, where space is available by utilising some of the existing carriageway. From Pheasant Lane, this will become a shared cycle path, which is dictated to by the available width constraints. In addition, to meet the required standards for width, space, junction geometry and crossings to improve safety for all of our users, the speed limit will be reduced. This will be supported with a series of speed reduction measures, including carriageway narrowing, reduced corner radii at junctions and average speed cameras. To summarise from me, the key areas of construction that will be undertaken within this first phase include a fully segregated 2-way cycleway. This will be 2.5 metres wide, reducing to 2 metres east of Hayden Lane. A pedestrian footway, 2 metres wide, which will reduce to 1.5 metres minimum, just east of Hayden Lane. The carriageway will be narrowed, but this will be to no less than 3.15 metres each way. Bus stops will be created within the carriageway to limit any impact on bus journey times. We'll also be undertaking new areas of amenity landscaping and creating priority cycle path crossings at Hayden Lane and Pheasant Lane. I'm now going to hand you over to Richard, who will discuss these elements in a bit more detail.
Thanks, Kath. So we will be starting the section of works at Pheasant Lane, and we'll progress west towards the M5 overbridge. And this section, as you can see on the sketch there, shows the new raised table with priority cycle crossing. We'll then move from Pheasant Lane towards Hayden Lane. The slide here shows a typical detail with the new segregated cycleway and footway. Includes new curb lines to create the buffer zone, new demarcation curbs to segregate the cycleway and footway, and path edgings to support the new surfacing. And there'll be a good picture at the end of this just to show that in more detail. Hayden Lane, as with Pheasant Lane, it'll be a raised table constructed at Hayden Lane entrance to create priority crossing for cyclists and safe crossing for pedestrians. And as we continue west, the final section tapers back down by the M5 overbridge just to tie in safely with the existing carriageway and footway. So just a brief construction timeline. We actually started in October 2021 with some enabling work. So we've been doing the location of buried services, some trial holes to the existing carriageway to determine its construction. We've constructed a temporary path to the westbound carriageway so we can safely move pedestrians across. And the road has been narrowed to facilitate the new scheme. The construction works start imminently now in November and will continue through to spring 2022. And during this time, there will be a need for traffic lights. We'll endeavour to keep these periods to a minimum. Predominantly, they'll be offline, so from sort of first going out at 9 o'clock and lasting at 3:30. But there will be a couple of periods just to keep everybody safe when we will need 24/7 lights, and we program that in a way to keep that to a minimum. And at the end of the scheme, there will be some overnight road closures to carry out the final surfacing and the white lining. And then all due for completion in spring 2022. And there's some contact details here. So we've got a dedicated email address and contact number. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to use those.
Thank you, Richard. Ahead of this presentation, we ask the public to submit any questions they may have about this section of the scheme. So we'll begin with the first one. What will you be doing to make sure paving distinguishes pedestrians from cyclists in segregated sections?
Thanks, Matt. I'll take this one. So I think, as Richard alluded to earlier, I think this is a good question and one that's best explained with an image. So we've prepared this slide here, which is includes a photo of the current West of Cheltenham scheme that's on site currently. So this installation was carried out by Knights Brown and shows a typical tactile paving layout for the end of a segregated and segregated footway cycleway. I think the first important point to note here is the question refers to where routes end, but the preference is to continue any segregation of cyclists and pedestrians for as long as possible. Therefore reduce the need for transitions from different cycleway types, but ultimately junctions and different layouts dictate that where this is not possible, such a layout such as the one on the screen will be used. So as you could see in the photo, tactile paving on the left-hand side of the track where the cycleway is running in the direction of the path to demark the cycleway, and then on the right-hand side the tactile paving is laid at 90 degrees across the path, demarcating the footway. I think it's also worth noting in this photo for for interest for people on the curbing types, it shows the background the trapezoidal curb that's been used on the west to the footway and the cycleway, and this will be one of the curbing types that will be used predominantly on the B4063 too.
Thanks, Alex. Second question. How will you manage these works given that the B4063 is currently closed?
Okay, so we'll be liaising with National Highways all the way through the scheme. We're obviously aware of the works that are going on there currently. They've also, there's been a crossover with the WICTIS phase 1 and 2, so we're already having those conversations previously, and the plan is to try and do the sort of main works that involve any closures later on in the programme in the hope that we avoid those existing works.
Thanks, Richard. Our third question is, will Hayden Lane and Pheasant Lane be closed during the work?
Again, there will be some short closures. I anticipate sort of 3 days for each area, and this will be to construct the raised tables and the white lining. And again, we're trying to keep those to a minimum, and there is some contingency if the B4063 overruns. We may be able to do that with three-way traffic lights. So we have got some contingencies in place for that.
Thanks, Richard. Where will a temporary pedestrian path be put when the second stage commences from Pheasant Lane towards about?
Yeah, so at the moment that's outside of the current scope, but we are looking at options, and as with this current phase that we're just starting now, we will, the theme will be to totally isolate the pedestrians from the footway we're working on.
Thanks, Richard. What lessons have been learned from your works around West Cheltenham to date in terms of delivering safe cycle infrastructure?
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, so that's a really good question we received there, especially I think given the release of the new cycle guidance, LTM 120 in 2020. So obviously that is new guidance, and as with all our highway schemes, the County Council, our designers and contractors look to ensure lessons learned are captured and shared for all our schemes, not just cycleway. 463, we've got a couple of extra ways in which lessons have been learnt. We've got the benefit of the consistency of design teams from our consultants Atkins, who have not only worked on the West of Cheltenham scheme, but continue to progress the design for the entire length of the B4063 route. And for the first phase of works, it's also great to be able to welcome Knights Brown, who can continue their good work that they've done at phase 1 of the WICTIS scheme. So really good there of both designers and contractors for this phase. I think in terms of specific examples on the type of cycle infrastructure, I think the couple of examples I'd give are, as we've mentioned previously, we've trialled the demarcation curb on WICTIS phase 1, and we've taken some feedback on that, and we'll be taking that learning into the B4063, and also some of the layouts of priority side road crossings in the Cheltenham walking and cycling scheme. Some of the designs being taken, lessons that are being picked up are also being shared with the teams working on the B4063.
Thanks for that, Alex. Our next question is, what steps will be taken in delivering this new scheme to ensure that current practice and safety standards are now followed? And how will you protect cyclists during your planned works while enabling ongoing access?
Thanks, Matt. So in terms of the steps for delivering the new scheme, obviously, as Alex just adhered to, there's been a lessons learnt from WICTIS phase 1 and 2. And also in terms of how we're protecting the public, the cyclists, pedestrians. So for this initial section, so we've put a temporary footpath on the westbound, and the current road layout in terms of cyclists doesn't actually allow for the cyclists. There isn't a dedicated cycleway, hence the need for the works. So the cyclists currently are on the highway and will remain on the highway. But what we've actually done is reduce the speed limit to 30 miles an hour through the section, and that will also be backed up with some radar sensors, just to remind people it's a 30 mile an hour limit, and average speed cameras will be going in as well.
Great, thanks, Richard. How will you work with utility providers such as gas, water and broadband to ensure that these are not damaged?
I'll take this one as well, Matt. Thank you. So as with any scheme we do, the minute we start to excavate, it's one of the biggest risks that we face as a construction company, certainly in civils. So we have our procedures we work to. We're in touch with all the utility providers. We've spent quite a bit of time out there already with specialist contractors, locating the services that are there, and again, sort of trial houses as we go. So to say, it is a big risk. It always is, especially some of these things are very difficult to trace. But it's just through good working practices and liaison. So.
Great, thank you, Richard. Have you considered using this as an opportunity to improve drainage along specific trouble areas, i.e. regular flooding of houses?
Thanks, Matt. I'll take this one. So I suspect this question relates to the next phase between Pheasant Lane and Earl Court. So just a reminder, started on site and remains in design. But we have had to date some proactive engagement with residents along there who have highlighted some existing drainage issues with the current carriageway. So I'd like to reassure those residents these concerns have been shared with the design teams who are currently considering options as to how improvements can be made as part of these works. I think it's worth noting that the topography of the carriageway is a challenge in some areas, with the carriageway higher than the road in many instances, but investigations are underway as to the best solution for us to take forward.
Great, thank you for that, Alex.
And I'll finish off just by closing the session today and just say thank you very much for all of you who've joined us online and for anyone watching back via the website. For more details on the scheme, please visit our website, gloucestershire.gov.uk/B4063. Or if you have any specific queries following the session today, you can email major projects at gloucestershire.gov.uk or the Knights Brown contact details that were provided previously. I think for people out there who are interested in the scheme, the useful tool is our scheme bulletin. So I'd encourage everyone to sign up to those if you can. So we'll be using those over the coming years to provide updates on the scheme, both for construction and also for any design progress and any upcoming engagement activities, which will next year focus on the section between Elmbridge Roundabout and Gloucester City Centre in the new year. I think just to close the call today, we absolutely acknowledge that this scheme will inevitably cause some disruption to residents and businesses for your patience during the works. And we look forward to working with you closely to try and minimise disruption as much as possible. Thanks again for joining, and take care.